Hi, my name is Jason Ford. I'm with Still Patriot Partners, and today I'm going to talk about information security for RIAs and private wealth advisors. So a pretty bold statement here: how to make your client data secure, mature your business information security to pass audits or compliance from regulatory bodies, increase the trust of your and the confidence with your clients in less than 3 months using our cybersecurity maturity process. So the three areas that we're going to kind of talk about first in current state and future state would be compliance, access to data, and the last piece being trust with clients and how you can also build trust within your business processes with your employees as well. So compliance right now is chaotic at best. There's many different regulatory boards that are actually suggesting how to do information security for private wealth advisors and RIAs. But there's really no centralized piece until you come down to an audit. And if you get through the audit process, you then quickly find out what you're supposed to be doing, or that area is also pretty gray. Those controls are gray. It doesn't really give you much definition. So what we've seen here is that there's a few studies that have been done over the last couple of years that the most common RIA regulatory compliance deficiency is cybersecurity. And quickly followed by that is business continuity plans and whether they're tested or not. Cybersecurity has been an increasing concern for this space, mainly because of digital transformations. And those digital transformations are really being caused by the client's desire to see their data, their financial data, all in one place, either on their phone or wherever they are traveling, on their tablets, how they're consuming them, whether they can aggregate the data together with other things that they have. All those things are causing a different way of working for private wealth management. In 2019, there was a roughly about 1,100 firms that were audited for RIAs. In RIAs had at least one cybersecurity-related regulatory deficiency, which is a slight increase up from 2018. That tells us that those controls and how to implement those is not really clearly defined, and that's a pretty high number. Take in comparison to how credit card processing is done using the PCI framework, that is really standardized. It's been through multiple revisions. It's pretty well known on how to do those things, but it's also had a maturity life cycle. As we progress through this work from anywhere methodology that we're kind of forced into post-March of 2020, no longer is the employee just inside of the office where you can see what they're doing. And really that was a sort of a false sense of security because that data is sitting at other places anyway. Most of the time it's not actually in your office. It's not in paper files. It could be in paper files, but most likely not. And how those things are getting transferred back and forth between your client aren't actually in that office. They're sitting somewhere else. So as we see this trend moving forward, again, with these digital transformations of how that data is flowing back and forth, and you're providing that to your client base and into your employees as well. The SEC is most likely going to start enforcing things around that to make sure that data is actually being protected no matter where it sits and how it is actually being consumed. The unfortunate part is the SEC really hasn't provided any, they provide some guidance, but they haven't provided any hard guidelines and hard frameworks in order to apply to this space. It's certainly, it seems like market signals right now are pointing towards that's going to happen in the next few years, if not sooner. And given how things are being pushed forward and how data is actually being consumed, both from your employee and from the client base, it's only natural that that's going to start to become a major focus. So the next piece of this from a program testing side, in 2019 and 2020, cybersecurity testing really wasn't, it really didn't change over those 2 years. But really what did change was business continuity planning. And the thing that changed the most was obviously due to pandemics. So you can kind of see here in 2019, only about 30% or so was really focused on compliance testing for business continuity plans. It eked up a little bit in 2020, but really went past March of 2020. We're looking at 65, 70%. And what this shows is that there's still this strong need for testing of cybersecurity policies and procedures ensure that your client data is actually secure, but also if some natural disaster happens or some other disaster happens to your business, that your client's data isn't actually going to be impacted. And those clients aren't going to have they're not going to feel the effects of that. So from 2012 through 2018, we can see a steady increase of the number of audits that have increased. The amount of RAs that are registered today isn't greatly fluctuating within a couple thousand or so over this period of time. But really, the number of audits are increasing, and then the number of deficiencies and significant findings are also increasing. And this is all due to, again, cybersecurity and business continuity planning and how those things actually are looked at and implemented. These findings came directly from the SEC audits report from 2019. And as we see digital transformations happening more and more, and it becomes more important, I think we're going to find even more audits are going to occur, because now you can see that there's a way to reproduce that audit at scale instead of having to send an individual person out or a group of people out to every single office in order to do these audits. They can do most of this work remotely, have you gather evidence, send all the evidence to them. Once they have all their evidence, then they'll come on site for a week or two and then write a report. So it's all coming down to, how can they scale this up faster and make it more efficient so they can look at more of these RAs. Today, there's 22,000 roughly, I believe, in 2020. So we're looking at, 10% of those are getting audited. Is it going to be 20% next year, or is it going to be less? No one knows at this point. So the next piece of this is asset management. And asset management means a couple of things. It's not only where your data sits, your client's data, their personal identifiable information, whether that's in PDF forms or whether that's through some document management process, or whether that's in your custodial platform or how you email them around back and forth. All those things attribute to how you're accessing that data and that sensitive information. So of about 2,000 respondents, prior to 2020, 80% of them said that there was no new security policies put in place for a work from anywhere environment. So they're using the same policies that they had when they were in an office environment versus having, a little bit different twist to being remote and how they're actually being implemented so that you can not have to worry about where you are, right? So if you're on the beaches of Florida, for instance, or if you're somewhere in Iowa in your home office, it doesn't really matter, right? There should be some state that's there, but what we're finding is that there isn't. Most of the security policies were written for an office environment. And then whenever this all happened in March of 2020 and people scattered, that's whenever it became pretty clear that there needs to be new policies, but they weren't actually getting created. How to handle data, for instance. So these work from home employees, about 50% of them are using their own personal computers. And that's coming out of, again, a survey that was done by IBM that shows that, employers are not giving them the equipment that they need or the training that they need in order to protect that data that is actually sensitive to the customer. In a lot of cases where, if it's a bring your own device type environment, there's still some security controls that have to be put in place to ensure that data isn't being used for something that shouldn't be. Business leaders always fight spam email coming inbound, and that's the most common cyber threat, is coming via email. And I know personally, I've gotten this many times, is that you get an email from either the owner of the company or the CFO or some director of HR or something along those lines with their name in the from field, but it's really not their email address after that. And they're asking you for some piece of sensitive information, whether that's their social security number or whether it's a bank account, whatever it is. About 90% of business leaders say that is the way that attacks happen. And they must be successful, because if 90% of businesses are getting attacked in that way, there has to be people that are responding to it. So really what it comes down to is the employee is either the weakest or the strongest link in really risk mitigation for your business. CEO of Dynasty Financial Services estimated roughly about half of RIAs are going to cut their office spaces, and really larger firms are looking to reduce that, as they're going to find that there's going to be some happy medium between the way we were working pre-March of 2020 and post-March of 2020. Those are the two ends of the spectrum. We're going to come back somewhere in the middle of that, rubber band back and forth a few times maybe. but it's not going to be just everybody's going to be remote or everybody's going to be on site. It's going to be some mix of those two, most likely going forward. So having a different approach to how you deal with your access management to your data, or your client's data for this particular case, is really needed. So a survey by Gartner mid this year, for RIAs, compliance risk concerns, what is the biggest thing that they're concerned about? And roughly 55% of them came back and said cybersecurity or a data breach. The rest of it pales in comparison to those pieces, because it comes back to the trust factor, right? Is if you have a breach or something that is your fault, that their personal identifiable information goes out, that is a large concern for that trust factor that's there. So coming to, again, trust and reputation, IDC did a survey saying that if there was an information security breach, what percentage of clients would exit the relationship from a business if they did have something and they didn't respond to it in a proper way or an expeditious way. So roughly about 78% of those would leave, and 22% would stay. So if you would lose 78% of your customer base, that's pretty catastrophic for your business planning, right? So if you have that exit of revenue out, it's going to be pretty difficult to stay in business and continue to do what you're doing. Along with that, incident response is key. So what percentages of businesses actually have an incident response plan? It's pretty small. It's 22, 23%. And then of those 22, 23%, it is 55% of them don't actually test their incident response plan. So if they actually had to use it, would it actually go out without a hitch? Or was there holes in it? I don't think that you would know that until you actually went through that process a few times. So even testing it annually, once a year, is considered to be a great reducer for having customers churn out because of your incident from an information security breach, and then you didn't respond to it in a way that was in the best interest of your clients. The other part of this survey showed that the RI firms considered their biggest cybersecurity risk to actually be their human staff. And they can be your weakest or your strongest link, depending upon what knowledge you enable them with. But in the current state, that is something that is definitely missing. So being prepared really does, it really does pay, right? To go through the testing, to go through the process of looking at what processes you have and procedures you have, and how those things impact not only your employees, but also how you communicate with your clients. So an IBM study in 2018 showed that the cost of a data breach for a company that really responds quickly, which is in less than 30 days. Typical security breaches aren't found for more than 180 days, which is a very long time. But it saves about $1 million on average. So this report was focused on medium and large businesses, so north of 500 million in revenue. So if you look at the proportionality between 500 million and $1 million on average, you can kind of see where that lays. And if you don't have, $500 million of revenue, then you can kind of do the ratio there. Testing your cybersecurity plans or information security plans annually can reduce the cost of breaches. Again, this study was done on larger entities. So again, you're looking for ways to reduce the amount of cost that you have whenever these things occur, because you can't eliminate everything, right? There's always these attacks are always changing, always morphing into a different form. Technology is introduced, it's pulled out, there's things that are missed. We're humans by nature. So those things all attribute to how much a information security breach could cost. If you're able to automate your information security, breaches even cost less, roughly about 50%. So as you can see, as you pull these layers onto process and procedures into your business, you're eliminating risk and you're eliminating exposure. So the future states we'll talk about in these three. The first one's compliance. If you apply an information security model to the business, you're really addressing data protection, data security, data privacy, secrecy. You're monitoring for threats that's really needed for regulatory compliance. All these things are states that you wish to be in, so that whenever you go through an audit or whether you go through a some other piece of framework or a client asks you what you do, you're able to respond to these things. If you fully implement security policies and procedures, you get compliant really fast regulatory audits. Again, you're using best practices from U.S. government agencies such as NIST and the Department of Defense. Those are applied to back to commercial businesses. And then sometimes those things are applicable and sometimes they aren't. Governments do have different standards, but there's certainly something that is common between all of them. Your organization will achieve insert regulatory compliance, that you have driven to you here locally. In Virginia, if you're under a certain amount of assets, then you're held accountable by the state with the SEC or the SEC. If you're, something larger than that, it could be the SEC or FINRA, FFIEC, basically, but you're addressing information security and data privacy. You have compliance with safeguards rules and identity theft red flags rule, which those two say that you are actually going to take all measures you can in order to protect your client's PII or personal identifiable information. So for access management in the future state, you look at it as that you're able to produce 100% of evidence support for your compliance audits. You're able to say who accessed what, where, and how, and who read it. Where was that done? Did they copy and paste things from one document to another if you want to go that granular? 70% of lower risk of not detecting an information security attack. So you have a way to actually see into what is happening in your business processes and actually be able to monitor it and report on it. You can reduce your information security threat via malicious email by 94%. That's huge, 94%. Doesn't say that they're not going to come in, doesn't say that they're going to slip past the technology because they're going to, but what's going to happen is you're going to get to a place where you're going to have a security first posture. And that is, again, your organization will take that approach and inject that into your culture and processes. You have to not differentiate where employees work. You don't want to have to care about that. So you kind of adopt this do not trust until validated workflow for how that data is being accessed, no matter if it's a subcontractor, if it's an employee, if it's yourself, whoever that is, or if it's another third-party system that you're leveraging in order to bring some enrichment to your data, like a customer management system. So trust and reputation comes down to if you want to increase your wealth clients' trust in you by 30% just by talking about information security approaches. And obviously you have to put these things in place and prove them. But if you communicate that you're doing these things, customers will be more willing to talk about you to other wealth possible clients for you. So it becomes this marketing circle because you are trying to look out for them. You're taking their best interests and you're putting them as your own. Client churn or attrition will due to an information security event will be less than 2%. Typical attrition rates, like we saw before, you're going to lose 78% of your customers on average based upon that report for an information security breach. If you do not respond to it in a judicious and expeditious fashion. Putting in a proactive defense of detection and responding to information security threats. Again, this is all with your employees' activities, client-sensitive data, and these are all required for compliance. You and staff is actually starting to become your first line of defense, right? You can reduce the amount of social engineering attacks by 70% because you have processes in place to validate the people who are actually talking to them. And those people and those employees will become your true data protectors. It's one thing to have technology in place, but you also need to have the people in place too. So data security, what are you really trying to do? You're trying to increase your cyber security maturity and have a more mature process, have things figured out, have it tested, have a plan, right? Really, it's have a plan and make sure the plan actually works. So with that, maturity comes with information security audit support, comes with protecting your sensitive data. And all this is really driven into 5 levels. We actually do use 6. Internally, which 0, you have nothing. 5, you have kind of this everything automated approach. And in between is these different states, and we'll get to those in a little bit. But those different areas allow you to measure, basically cut, and then measure again, cut until you get it to where you exactly have to be for that particular state. And then you move to the next one. And you get more and more mature as time moves forward. It gives you sort of an action plan in order how to implement these things. So with our type of average results, we're seeing that we're 25% more depth than other providers. We're seeing that we're about 55% less cost, and we're also doing this in 10 or 15% of the time that others are. So what this allows us to do is allows us to deliver this solution that you're looking for, this state that you're looking for, in an amount of time that is short, because we've done it before. It's a repeatable process. So who's our service for? So are you an RIA, private wealth executive or advisor, independent broker? You're trying to keep your client's data protected. You don't know where to go. You don't know how to get started, but you know you need to do something, right? So you're really concerned. You want to address this. You're struggling to get started with this whole process. You're losing sleep. It's stressful. Are you worried about who is seeing your client's sensitive data? And employees working, whether it's employees, whether it's third parties, whether it's, anyone else who's interacting with your client data. Because at the end of the day, it is your client data. And you're allowing someone else the right to use that if you're engaging into a third-party agreement to provide some service, right, for you. How do you get through those cybersecurity events, or even worse, an audit, for those systems? Are you an RIA, a wealth advisor, again, a broker? You're really good about what you do. You've heard a lot about cybersecurity, and information security, but it's this foreign concept, and you really just don't have an understanding of what it is and what it entails. Do you store, and you think that my custodial platform is providing that for me, all these informational security pieces that I need. But what about the stuff that you're storing documents on laptops or a shared drive, or maybe a customer management system that's in the back end? Where is that data being put? You may have some of these states on some pieces of your business, but is it applied across to all states? In 2019, compared to 2018, this survey was done that shows from 300 RIAs what the focus was on investment. So cybersecurity went from 11% to almost 60% in 18 to 19, and that's going to even increase more now that March 2020 happened. Other things that are inside this report we're saying is it's all digital transformation. It's reporting, it's document e-signature, DocuSign, things of that nature. It's how you do document process flows. It's how do you do internal customer management stuff? Are you using social media for your marketing efforts? Things of that nature, right? So all these things are all driving, really at the end of the day, cybersecurity and information security, which is then leading to deficiencies during the audits. So with more technology becomes more risk if it's not implemented correctly. And if that isn't done in a way that is planned out and thoughtful and repeatable, then it's going to be difficult to actually have success with it. So what's the concept? So you can achieve a higher level of data privacy using a cybersecurity maturity model, right? But you have to understand the technology, information security, the data compliance to do it, because information security impacts all levels of business. It's just not the data flowing around. It's also processes and procedures. We are the best option to solve this problem for RIAs and private wealth and brokers, because we have developed this proprietary information security maturity process based upon industry best standards. And we've been doing this for a lot of RIAs and private wealth advisors already. So I've talked about a little bit about these levels, if you will, of maturity. So we've pulled up, like I said, there's really a sixth one here of 0, which is nothing, which we don't really find too many people doing that, because they have some level, even if it's the dreaded 2-factor or the 6-digit code or the 5-digit code that you get to your phone every time you have to log into something. They're doing something, because their custodial platforms are typically enforcing them to do some level of it, at least for some data protection. Now, on every other piece of the business, that isn't actually the case. So with these levels, you see 0 being nothing, or 1 being very little, and 5 being almost everything. With a level 5, you really have everything automated. You have all your processes tested. You're probably doing that more than quarterly. You're going through all of your evidence collection. You're trying to get a better understanding of how your business works and how it flows, and make efficiency improvements, whatever that is, on how documents flow, or how you open accounts, or how you deal with getting data from your custodial platform to your end customer. In between all of this is different levels of maturity. So in the middle of this, you're probably doing some level of testing or some level of procedure and policy. But really at level 3, that's whenever you start looking more proactive instead of reactive. And how you get from step to step is kind of this process that we've come up with. So what does it do? So it really levels the playing field on how we evaluate different RIAs in private wealth. So we can use a step-level methodology to kind of look at organizations and measure where they're at today. And then using that level, we know that the steps to get from one level to another and how long that roughly will take. But really, your desired level is appropriate with your resources and capabilities and needs. So if you only have a certain amount of hours to commit to something, to commit to this process, as we help you walk through it, as we help you change how you do certain functions and make them either more efficient or more secure, all those things are driven upon how much time and effort and money you want to put towards it. So what does this do? It makes your information security proactive, not reactive, as you step through these levels. So the epitome of data protection is full automation, right? It is optimization of those processes. But once you achieve that, information security really becomes a reactive, not a reactive measure, but really a proactive measure. And now whenever you see an information security event, you're really taking data security and privacy into the highest consideration. So one of our case studies that we have is with Piedmont Wealth Advisory. So Doug has been an advocate of ours for a while now, and he was much like most RIAs that we run into with having concerns about remote work and actually how to deal with data privacy. And we want to make sure that if and when we get hit by an audit, we actually know what we're doing and we actually have things in place to deal with those. And at the end of the day, they really wanted to show their clients that, look, we are taking steps to make sure that we're protecting your data, because that is what is most valuable to you as someone who has assets. So the backstory on Still Patriot Partners, we're all former executives, business owners, managers, employees that were really tasked with the responsibility of information security. So myself, I've been a chief information security officer for 3 times over the last 16 years. Our CEO, Amy, she's been focused on compliance and operations for the last 15 years. And really, we started this business because we, like you, were always trying to solve problems. We didn't want to focus on areas we weren't good at, right? And that's to solve that problem. We didn't want to have to go learn how to do that particular thing. So for instance, finance or legal, we didn't want to become lawyers and we didn't want to become CFOs. So we looked outside to get that expertise. We are a cybersecurity firm. However, we're not your traditional MSSP or managed security services provider that you might have heard of. And I'm sure that someone is trying to sell you into, or you may be with one today. We're serving more as a different security and operation role that we found a gap between management and the person that is actually responsible for information security. So whenever we have this process that we go through, it was always a less of an understanding and less of a conversation about how we're going to get there and what process we're going to do, what action plan. And it was more of, well, what if scenarios. So what we want to do is we spent quite a bit of resources and personal effort talking to industry experts, other RIAs, competitors, to understand what is happening in this space. So what are you guys actually truly looking for? And after doing that research, we found out they wanted an easy button for information security. It became this nagging pain for them. They just didn't quite understand how to get from point A to point B easily. There's all these convoluted ways, but there wasn't this easy way to do it. So really our strategy for that research was to develop this proprietary framework that we have, and it's based upon, again, industry standards. And it really comes back to cybersecurity maturity for firms like yourself. Initial assessments are used in order to develop where you are, and then we can actually go and increase your information security maturity within as little as 8 weeks. So we can come in and say, if you're a 1 or a 2, we can get you to a 2 or a 3 pretty quickly, or at least halfway there if you have the resources to do that. There's always easy, low-hanging fruit to hit in order to get you to a better stance so you don't have to worry about those things and get you more mature. After implementing this strategy for a couple different RAs, we really found it worked really well. So I think we really found the key to bridging the gap between information security and RIAs and private wealth. And we were able to put fears at ease. People could sleep at night, less stress. They knew that they didn't have this risk hanging over their head, because that's what it is. It's this hanging, nagging stress point that is threatening the trust and the reputation in their markets. So we really took matters in our own hands at that point, had a repeatable solution. We started Steel Patriot Partners, took the approach of not being a one-size-fits-all information security company, where we're not just worried about threats, or we're not just worried about putting process and procedures or doing audits. We're trying to take one step back from that and provide a holistic, easy-button solution for wealth management. By doing this, we took time to understand the business, how businesses operate, and then what is really important regarding risk. And that could be different for each company, right? And we can change that model a little bit depending upon that assessment and figure out what's really right for you. And we don't have to put you in this box and repeat it every single time. There's going to be 80 or 90% of the box that's the same, but there's always going to be this variance that we're going to put into place that is really for you. And then after we do this, we start this journey and get your business using this repeatable maturity process, and we become really a strong business partner with you. So a little bit about myself. Been doing cybersecurity really since 1997. Been doing everything from process in the government space and risk governance in the public space, or the government side, to private side as well. In 2004, I started a company that was focused on security application delivery. And what that means is public-facing websites, applications, whether that's doing credit card processing, whether that's dealing with healthcare data, or whether it was for the U.S. government. In 2017, I successfully exited that business. And then during my time there, I went through the GSA FedRAMP program in 2014 and 15, as well as PCI for credit cards and HIPAA compliance for healthcare, and really focused on security-enabled applications. And we were doing this in both private and public clouds and software as a service type models. So post-acquisition, I stayed on in the role of Chief Information Security Officer and Chief Technology Officer, and continued to drive security initiatives along with technology direction. As you just kind of heard in the last slides, security has always been a passion of mine. It always will be. Not having your data out there is something that, if it's not supposed to be, is something that's really important. And we all have to deal with that whenever it occurs. So we founded Steel Patriot Partners on focusing on simplifying cybersecurity operations and compliance. And we're focusing in on small and medium-sized businesses. So whenever we focus down in these areas, natural progression happens and business maturity happens, and then that increases revenue and decreases churn. So a couple core concepts. Information security should be easier. You've kind of heard me talk about a little bit of this. How do you ensure that information security for RIAs and private wealth is seamless, it's painless, it's a repeatable process? Because something that's repeatable is less likely to fail. So you want to protect your data, your client's personal identifiable information, and your reputation as trusted and secure. There is not a unified way for information security to be applied to RIAs today. Bill Gates said in 2013, this cyber thing, it's wonderful that more attention is going into that. Even all the way back in 2013, if you think about over the years how much the internet has changed, even with the evolution of Tesla or Uber, or even Microsoft for that matter, or Amazon, how far have they come in the last 7 to 10 years? Cybersecurity was something that wasn't even considered 20 years ago. It was something that was kind of not even looked at. If you try to do this, if you do information security in-house, it's expensive and full of risk, right? So you have to hire and find someone. Cybersecurity engineers are notoriously expensive because they're high-skilled employees and there's not a lot of them. And keeping them managed and engaged and fully tasked is a difficult process if you don't have new things for them to look at. And usually what happens is you spend some period of time to get to the maturity level you're looking to get to, and then everything's automated. So they sit there and they just watch it. And that's not fun for them. That's boring, right? They don't want to sit and just watch bits go past the screen. They want to see if they can find new things to engage them. So the old way of this is, information security was just trying to be the one that wasn't actually being found, is security by obscurity, right? So you don't want to be the person that's found, and truly, that's a bad way of doing it, because if you have data that someone wants, it doesn't matter what size you are or how obscure you think you are, they're going to find you. And what that does is it creates unwanted stress for the business and the business owners. And that really does pull away from the focus of the business, which is growing it and finding new clients, right? And nurturing the ones you have. And perhaps, even during the stock market craziness that's happened, over the springtime, obviously from March and April, how do you deal with communicating to your clients and telling them, look, this is the path we need to stay on and stay steady, or, we need to move you into some other type of asset. That really results in chaos, and it's very reactive. If you have some kind of plan in place, and then you don't have to worry about being reactive, you can actually have something that's tested, it's proven, it's a process-driven piece. So our approach, again, information security is process-driven. It's based upon the maturity levels that we've been developing using industry standards. It's repeatable, it's measurable, it's proactive, keeps your data safe. It works on any business. Does not matter what information security efforts you've taken, whether it's a little or it's a lot. So a couple of frequently asked questions we get: do I have to be a security expert to increase my cybersecurity maturity? No, you don't. We do most of the heavy lifting. We're obviously going to work with you in order to create process, and we're going to give you some baselines and some frameworks to work from. We're going to have some things written out for you, and then you can make adjustments as needed, because it's not a one-size-fits-all type solution. It can't be. It's completely transparent to you. Another question we get: I already have some information security tools in place. Do I have to replace them or rip them out or throw them away? Throw away all that money that I spent? No, you don't have to. We're going to augment the tools that you have in place. Do we have certain ways of looking for data and information and threats? We do. We can usually work with almost every tool that's out there. How big do I have to be to use your service? Really, it's any size. We don't differentiate on that. It could be a couple employees, it could be hundreds, it could be close to 1,000. We have them across the board, and this model fits for all of those. So it doesn't matter how big you are and how big you're going to be. We can grow with you. We are all located in the U.S., and this is a common thing that we get asked: is everybody in your company U.S. citizens and located here? We are. We're all located here in the U.S. We're all U.S. citizens. Do we outsource any of our operations? Nope, we do it all internally. And that's the way we chose to, we want to make sure we're delivering a high level of service. And the only way that you can do that is by ensuring that we're doing that with our employees and we're not doing that with subcontractors. That way that we can ensure that the information that you're getting and all the transparency you're getting is directly from us. Do you have to be all located in one place, in one office? No. We talked a little bit about we should be focusing on it being a work from anywhere, not a work from an office, or it doesn't really matter if you're in the office or if you're not. It's the trust but verify. Don't give information access until you validated that person through the workflows in which you've set up. I'm small. I don't think I need a service like yours, do I? It comes down to it doesn't matter what size you are. You have sensitive data that someone could use in order to do whatever they're going to do with it. So protecting that data is key, again, for the trust of your clients and you being a good data steward. I have cyber insurance. This is probably one of my favorite questions. If I have cyber insurance today, do I really need information security protection? And what most people don't understand is that cyber insurance is great. They pay out claims if you have a cyber event and you can prove and you show evidence according to that. But what most people don't know is that if you don't implement the controls and the frameworks that the insurance company wants you to implement, then they're not going to pay your claim. So if you're not taking the necessary precautions to protect, it's you being negligent on taking the efforts in order to put the protections in place. It's sort of like you're just driving your car into a wall. If you do it on accident, it's one thing. If you do it on purpose, it's quite another. And they look at it as that is you're not taking the necessary steps in order to protect the stuff that they're going to pay out on. So another kind of core concept for us is that, we see information security audits being a fear, and they shouldn't be a fear. You should be able to throw evidence down on a table to an auditor and say, read for a couple of days, I'll be back. You can ask me questions at that point. It should not be, I'm sitting in front of them shaking and worrying about what they're going to go through and what they're going to ask me. You should already know. You should already have taken the test 5 or 6 times before you walk into that room. By using a process-driven approach to this, we can say with every RA in business, we can get you to a higher maturity level with a tailor-made service. So what this, audits are a very necessary evil for this space. So obviously we want to focus on how to pass those with the least amount of stress and concern. Whether a regulatory body is looking for process and procedures on how you protect client-sensitive data, whether it's a safeguards rule or the red flags rule or GDPR or any other consequences that can be forced upon you because you didn't comply to them. Certainly don't be in the past, right? So in the past, client data will be in a filing cabinet, be a piece of paper, be something that is in a filing cabinet, a Rolodex. They don't scale, they don't work. You don't know where they are. There's no indexing system. Digital transformation doesn't allow, that's not a desirable state, right? To have something that's in paper and you call the person and be like, well, this is the numbers on the paper. It just results in chaos. So with our methods, now we're looking at how sensitive data is being consumed, no matter if it's the client, it's the employee, or it's a third-party system that's looking at it. Who has access to it? Can they access it with encryption? Are we putting in repeatable processes in how they look at it? We're looking for anomalies. So if someone accesses it in a different way that they shouldn't have, that's a behavioral change. What is being done to see those things? So for instance, in the case of an employee, if an employee's account is logged into from Atlanta, Georgia, and then 2 seconds later, the employee's account is also logged in from Bogota, as an example, then that's pretty far apart and probably not in the normal case of behaviors, because that one person can't be in 2 places at the same time. So again, a couple frequently asked questions about this. I'm compliant with these different regulatory things and I don't need information security. Well, if you're compliant with those, that's not true. We know that there is some level of process and procedure you have to have in order to be compliant with these regulatory bodies. It's probably unevenly applied to all parts of your business. It may only be done to your custodial account or something else, but it's not done to everything. And really what it comes down to is you're looking for your weakest spots and trying to improve them. Help, I'm being audited, right? How do you help me there? We go deep with information security and support and for your compliance audits. It really comes down to evidence collection, how you do interviews with auditors, kind of prep you on going through those pieces. We've done it a lot. Ensuring the security process and procedures are in place before you go into it, kind of getting the hang of it before you get into the audit. If you don't have any process in place, I'm lost. Where do I start? Start with the easy stuff. Put in place some policy and procedures that look at how the data is accessed. Two-factor authentication. How are people looking at your data? How is third parties interacting with it? You really want to try to lock down access first and then start maturing your policies and procedures to make how you get to that data more secure. So some steps to take, right? So all you have to do is these things. You really do an initial reflection on where your organization is with information security. Apply any missing pieces to that level, right, to fill in the gaps. You apply a reflection again, ensure all the holes are filled, repeat the process, again, reflect, apply, test. It's repeatable, right? And each level has different steps and different things to look at during the reflection process or the gaps. But that's what you're doing. You're filling holes, right? You're trying to find the weakest part and make it better. And really, at the end of the day, you've achieved a security model that's needed for audits and data privacy across the board. It's not just for your custodial platform. It's not just for your document management processes. It's not just how your employees handle the data. It's for everything. A couple different ways you can do this. So in-house, it's definitely the hard way because at the end of the day, you're focused on client management and client asset management. So if you do this yourself, it is expensive. You have to buy the software, the hardware, the talent, the process, create the process. And then you have to find ways to hire that talent. When you're going and you're trying to look for talent, you're competing against everybody for them, right? So I'm sure that if you do a quick Google search, you'll find that cybersecurity talent is definitely in a shortage. And then you have to train them and keep them engaged during that time after you hire them and figure out how to manage their activities so that and when you don't really understand what they're doing, because you have to become not an expert at cybersecurity, but at least some intermediate level, so that you can help them understand what they need to do and give them priority. Or you can use us to achieve a higher information security maturity process in as little as 8 weeks, which is much better, it's faster, and it's cheaper. An even harder way is to use multiple managed security service providers, right? So you have most MSSPs will focus on one particular thing, whether it's threat or compliance or risk, something, right? They're not really going to provide you a holistic picture of how to step through things, or maybe it's just a security operations center. They may provide you some software to look for some things, but that's going to be about it. They're going to tell you, hey, we found something. Here's what we found. They're not going to tell you how to fix it. They're just going to say, it's your problem. Deal with it. So really, it is to put together an information security department using multiple service providers. But again, you become basically the general contractor of information security. And then you have to manage those subcontractors. And those subcontractors may not have your best interests in their best interests, right? So how they deal with your data and how they deal with you may be very different than how they deal with someone else. You have to provide them direction so they ensure that they work together. So you're sort of the middle person, the glue holding all this together. And again, you have to figure out how to manage their activities. And then you have to understand cybersecurity. So it's no different than doing it in-house. You have to provide them that direction, at least be intermediate. Again, you can use us to just remove all that burden and become better, faster, and cheaper. So the easy button for information security. So what do we provide? So we give you this outsourced, simplified security services tailored to your business, right? We remove all the day-to-day stress for you, and we deliver a personal experience for you to make information security not a burden anymore. We focus on managing data privacy and look for threats and using our security operations service. You focus on running your business, and you really don't have to worry about it. I mean, you'll have some level of worry because you're going to want to make sure you have updates and you want to understand that you're being very transparent to you. So you're going to have some level of understanding. But at the end of the day, you don't have to focus on the day-to-day, making sure things are actually done in compliance. We can greatly improve your maturity in 8 weeks. Again, using our proprietary information security maturity model. So a little bit more about these levels. Again, we have 1 through 5 in this particular thing. And again, there's a 0 that really is nothing. That's why it's not on these slides. So basic security, some basic compliance, maybe some two-factor level authentications, level 1. You have some beginner hygiene with your cybersecurity. You have some process. You may limit access, have a basic incident response plan in place. Then as you keep going up, you're starting to see things become more and more compliant. So you start to get more and more mature. So you get SOC compliance, you get proactive. You start looking for threats and becoming able to respond to those easier. You pivot from doing everything manually to automation. Have some oversight. And then once you get the full automation at level 5, that's kind of where you want to be. Again, who's this for? It's again, RIAs, private wealth advisors. You're concerned about cybersecurity, but you don't know what it means. You assume that your data is protected by the platform you're using to do trades and all your asset management. But what are your employees and what are you doing with storing the documents outside of that platform? Is it on just laptops, shared drives, other systems, right? You know that there's a possibility of getting either audited or being attacked, and you just don't know where to go and get started. That's something that we definitely help with. A little bit more about Piedmont. So their information security worries that they were really looking for a way to ensure that their client data was secure no matter where it was used. And again, the data privacy and being forced into this remote work environment concerned them greatly. And they had this one unified monolithic model and got forced into something very different very quickly. And that caused them to have these concerns. They knew that their custodial platform was providing some kind of information security, but not holistic, right? They knew that there was other things that were going on that they had some weak spots. They felt vulnerable knowing that the information security continues to be an interest area and a focus for compliance audits and how they can get ahead of that curve before it becomes actually regulatory pushed. After we kind of came in, the wave of relief that they felt, increased cybersecurity gave them process and procedures that allowed them to feel less stress. They had reduced reduce vulnerability points, and we did that through not only securing up, with technology, but also through education and cybersecurity training for their employees. Increased visibility for compliance audits, and really became proactive on figuring out what spear phishing or those email attacks really were and how they looked and what they were doing and what to look for, so that they knew how to authenticate someone or make sure that they really were who they say they were before they responded. And at the end of the day, it really increased their clients' trust. And whenever they started talking about, hey, we're using an information security provider to ensure that your data is secure, and we're looking after that as good data stewards. Again, it came down to they got huge resonance out of that, and a lot more customer trust out of just communicating that fact. So again, the quote from before, how you move from one single office to very quickly to 6 or 7 in this particular case, and where they were exposed and how they were going through this process was really the stress points that they had. And Doug captured this, who's the owner of Piedmont, kind of went through this and really went to and put everything out on the table and said, look, this is something we need to do for our customers. So some quick and dirty benefits: you're able to sleep better at night knowing your client's data is protected. And that's just kind of stating the obvious there, but you know that you have better processes in place, so it should be you should be able to sleep a little easier and less stress from that perspective. You increase your maturity in as little as 8 weeks. You finally get rid of the fears of being prepared for an audit, right? So if you've gone through this and you have some weaknesses, an auditor is most likely going to find them. You can forget about clients leaving you because, again, due to an information security event, because your client's data will be secure. If there is some event that occurs, it's probably going to be very limited. And if your response time is quick and you tell them, look, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, then that goes a long way with your customer base. You feel relieved because you are good data stewards for your client's sensitive data and their personal identifiable information, because we all have it, right? We all have those forms that we're sitting around in PDFs that have different information pieces in it that shouldn't be. And you'll be able to save up about 45% annually versus doing this in-house or with other providers. So how does it work? So before, you'd have to go find a managed service provider. Most likely it doesn't focus in cybersecurity to help you and then solve information security compliance controls for you that were handed down from some regulatory body. You'd have to manage that provider and figure out what they have to do and what they're going to do. But now you can actually use a simple information security and maturity model that is process driven. It's much easier. It's repeatable. It's going to increase your trust, your information security, give you ease through audits, and really help protect your client's data and taking steps to get their data in a state that is not exposed. You can do all this by figuring it out, but let alone manage it yourself, it's going to be a very difficult process. So how do we do it? So we use endpoint security. We protect client data no matter where it lives from cyber threats. So whether that's on a laptop, a phone, a server, a third-party system, we try to look at all those places that we would actually see some kind of change in behavior and see how the data is moving between those systems or people in that matter. Put this maturity model in place. It's a repeatable process. Again, assessing maturity and how to move you from one state to another. Give you security operations, providing a transparent picture to you of what is happening for risk and exposure. And this is all done on 24/7 by 365. So if you're going to get control of your data, and you want it, this is all something that's resonating with you, and you want to get this done, and if you tried to do it in-house or tried to use it managing multiple service providers, and it just didn't work out or it cost too much. And while our services are priced dependent upon the number of employees and devices you have, we structure the cost on the information security services on a 12 or 24-month contract period. And we do a low, flat, monthly reoccurring fee for that period of time. So we spread that cost over that period of time. We're not going to hit you all at once up front. It's not going to be something, it's going to be an ad hoc, we're in there for 2 months and then we're gone. We're there to help you through this whole life cycle and this journey. What do you get? Compliance and audit support. We basically go through that with you, full compliance with regulations that you have to adhere to. Doesn't matter the framework, we can apply controls around those frameworks and interpret what they actually mean for you. We can control who's accessing your client data. This will allow you to sleep at night, so you don't have to worry about someone accidentally getting that data and using it maliciously. Endpoint security protects your data from someone accidentally clicking on a site and going to getting a piece of malware or something like that is going to steal or siphon data off of your devices, whether that's company owned or personal. We can certainly focus on bring your own devices as well. Security operations allows you to have a dedicated team of cybersecurity talent all the way from a C-level to an engineer. So you have everything from a chief information security officer all the way down to a security engineer at your fingertips and your disposal and at your access. All you have to do is click on the button right below this video. It says get a price. And we are looking forward to hearing from you very soon. Thanks for watching.